So finally we talk about why I ended up closing my bakery. And I don't know if I mentioned it, some people would consider it failing in business, but you know what? I don't think I failed. I think me running the bakery did shape me so much business-wise, and it's a good thing I closed down the physical bakery. So I would never ever consider me having to shut down business, any type of business, a failure. Running a business is extremely hard. The lessons you learn from running it, the lessons you learn from anything in life, as long as the decision you're making is for your own good, for your own betterment, like, it can never be a failure. Like, and also, I'm not afraid of failing, so what? If I fail, and then I can always pick myself up and do something else. And that's the thing, I tried to tell someone in the DM, me closing down has nothing to do with my skill. It's not like me not baking anymore means my skill will evaporate and fly away and never be found again. I'll still have the skills. Like, I'm a human being. I'm not just skilled in holding a palette knife and decorating. I have other things I'm skilled at, business-wise, and I can do those things, and maybe that's the path I want to take. So me closing the bakery, it wasn't something I like woke up one day and decided, I don't want to do this anymore. It was something I had considered, thought about for a long time. And you know what, if I had a YouTube channel then, I wonder if I would have documented it, but I don't know. I was really shy back then. I'm not as shy as I used to be, but I might have documented it for you to see my process until me closing down the bakery. But now, since that's not possible, here is my reason for why I shut down my bakery. As I mentioned in the second part of this series, where I mentioned like things were very different every single day. Like, we'd have days where we'd sell out, and then we'd have days where you'd sell like one or two things. That was one of the biggest contributing factors to me wanting to close my bakery, because every single day you're waking up so early to go have these items ready, and then like at the end of the day you didn't sell them. And there's things you can keep and sell the next day, but there's things once they're ready to eat, they're ready to eat. Like, what are you going to do with, like, at home? Like, in our homes we can keep chapati. Like, you can make chapati on Friday and eat them Saturday, Sunday. No one will say anything. But when people go to a restaurant, you know, chapo, mandazis, fresh chapati, fresh mandazi tastes different on day 1 and day 3. So there's no way chapati is made on Friday can be sold on Monday. Even selling them on Saturday is pushing it. So what essentially used to happen, if we had like things left over, if it's something like mandazis, chapatis, samosas, like, see, samosas, if they're not deep fried, they can be frozen. But once you deep fry them, you have to sell them. Otherwise, you're risking it because it's meat. So we'd take them home, like we'd eat them the next day for like our breakfast or our lunch. But then if it's too much that you can't resell, it's no waste, like food waste. So there was too much of that, too much of food waste. And it every time, like, I didn't technically throw them out like in the trash, but I'd give them to the caretaker, I'd give them to the watchman, I'd bring them home, we'd eat them. But you know, technically in your accounts, that's waste because you didn't sell them, you didn't get any money back from them, so you consider it as a loss. So there was too much of that, and like, it was weighing me down. So because I used to feel so bad having to like not, because it got to a point where we had a system for, if we don't sell out chapatis today and then we don't sell out tomorrow, we won't make chapatis again the entire week. Like, but you see, it's a good thing to do that, so that the next time we make them, because you know the aroma for fresh chapos, fresh samosas will make people come back and buy. But at the same time, if you take too long before you bring something back to your menu, if someone is craving a chapati, and they want a chapati today, they don't get. Tomorrow they want a chapati, they don't get. Day 3, they're going to go to someone else's shop and get the chapati and eat from there. So that's something we had to consider. So it was basically you're trying to play like a game with your potential clients. So it was weighing me so down. Juggling school and the shop was overwhelming, because waking up early, having to go straight to school, straight to the shop. Then I remember that time I was a professional Boda passenger. Like leave home, get dropped by my dad or my brother to the shop, leave the shop, rush to school by Boda because I have to be in class, I think at 8 on some days, rush to school, leave school, go back home, go back to the shop, leave the shop, go back home. Like in a day you've commuted so much, because sometimes class would be like 3 hours, so I only have class from 8 to 11, and then I go back to the shop the whole day and then go home. Like eventually it became so overwhelming that if we don't have an order on some certain days, I would not even bother going to the shop. And that also affects your business, because if you're not showing up at your business, if you're a business owner, any business owner knows, even if you're not needed at the shop, you have to show up consistently. Otherwise, you will be shown dust. So I had to make sure I've showed up at the shop severally, consistently. And that was obviously weighing me down every single time I had to do that. Yeah. So that was also a contributing factor to why I wanted to close down my shop. Despite having like a great landlord, electricity, KPLC, we had like in 2016 too many days without power, and to the point where I remember I kept on considering maybe I'll switch to a gas oven, although I'm not a big fan of gas ovens, because power used to go so often that I was like, I want to switch to a gas oven. And that's also why I used to be at the bakery till like 10 p.m, 11 p.m, because I was like, I'd rather leave all the orders for the next day, bake them at night, because we don't know about tomorrow. So I'd bake at night, make the icing ready, like in case there's no power the next day, we don't have to call clients and tell them we won't be on time, we won't be able to make your order on time. So I had to constantly like be ready, because you just don't know when KPLC would strike. I remember there was days I had to even go like carry ingredients back to the house to be able to bake, so that we don't disappoint clients. That whole mix was overwhelming. And then now water. In 2016, like I remember I closed my shop in August. Like the entire month of June and July, there was no water. So the landlord used to have to buy water, the water bowser thing, like to fill up the tank. But you're a food business. That water is not going to be enough. You need to do dishes every single day. And it's not kidogo dishes, it's a lot of dishes. So you need water consistently. So the caretaker would try, like if the water comes when we're not there, I'd have to leave him with buckets to fetch water for me. Like we always had extra water, and it was never enough. Sometimes we'd even have to buy our own water. And it had started to get so expensive, because it was never part of the budget, like to ever buy extra water. So not having water at the bakery was really taking a toll on the business, because food businesses, you need to be clean 100% of the time. So like if you need to wash your hands, you had to have someone else pouring water. Like the seamlessness of the business just was so disrupted in those like 2 months of no water. And I remember one day I had gone to the caretaker to ask him if he could please like let the taps run for just a bit so we clean the dishes. And obviously he has to run it by the landlord, who came, he agreed, and then he came down like to the bakery and he saw how much we were struggling on that particular, I think it was on a Saturday, and he was like, you know what, maybe you should consider installing a tank like up above the sink. That way when water comes in, like you guys have your own like separate water system, like water stored. That way for things like the tap, for you to wash your hands, you guys have like running water. And like, yes, it was a noble suggestion, it was a very good suggestion, and at that point I didn't consider it as a bad suggestion. So I came home and told my dad about it, and my dad was like, you're not the one who's supposed to like put that up, it's not your fault. Then, but I don't think my dad was seeing the seriousness of the situation. Then my dad came, like they had gone with my mom somewhere, then they passed by the shop that evening while we were about to close up, and he found me buying water. And when he asked me how much water we buy in a week, I told him. He was so shocked, and at that point I had, I think, mentioned at home I'm considering like shutting down, and he was like, yeah, like this isn't worth it, because if you have to buy water, you don't even know for sure how safe the water is every single time you buy. Since you're buying for a food business, it's not worth it. And we never used to use that water for baking. We used to buy other water for like baking and making tea. Like we'd buy the distilled water, and that's the water we'd use like to clean the dishes, like distilled water. And then we'd buy other water like for the floors. So he was like, nah, no, it's not worth it. Then at that point also, the person who was assisting me alikuwa ananikula kichwa. Like we kept on having like clashing moments, you know how, because I was in school most of the time, so she's by herself 90% of the time during the day. So as I said in the other video, in this video, if you run a business and you never show up for your business, things are bound to go wrong. Like you have to be present every single time. You have to be consistently there, even if you'll just come and sit and watch. Like you can't just disappear. It was just hectic, and I guess at some point it just became too much. Too much. I talked to my landlord, explained, like, I know it's not enough notice, but it's become too much. And he was very understanding. He just told me to like try return the shop to how it was so that I can get my deposit. And yes, I did get my deposit. And luckily, because I had been paying my rent like in 3-month batches, if I closed at that point, the rent in August would have been like the last month. So now if I don't renew like my license, my lease, I guess, if I don't renew it, I don't have to go. And I remember he had also raised rent, so that was another like contributing factor. Like if rent is up, and then I still have to keep playing games with KPLC, buying water, like too much financially was happening. I was like, home is much better, home is much more consistent. So that's basically how it ended up closing. Nothing bad happened. It's just a series of unfortunate events which were out of control human wise. It wasn't a building problem, it wasn't a financial problem, it was just too many things happening, like tumbleweed, growing and growing to the point where it became too much that we just had to shut down. And now looking back, in the first video I said I wanted like Pastry Pleasures to be a chain of different shops everywhere, but while running that bakery I realized if I ever want to have another bakery, I want one. Like there's the beauty and quality control in having like one place to run your business than having a multitude of them. So while running my bakery, I realized, having 20 Pastry Pleasures shops is not for me. I'd rather have one huge bakery that's consistently busy with like enough staff, everything is manageable than having 10 of them where like one of them is doing good, one of them is doing poorly. Yeah. So eventually I decided if I ever truly open another place, it would just be one perfect shop. Hopefully not too many things happening that are negative, not draining me. So did I consider it as a failure? No. It was a very good lesson. It taught me like how to run a business, what I want to do with my business in the long run. And I think when I closed the bakery, I worked now harder because I already had a goal in mind of what I want pastry pleasures to be. Because 2017, I keep saying I think I worked the hardest. 2017, it was one of my best years running a business, because I think that's even when my style changed. I stopped doing just simple cakes. I started doing like cakes that made me happy. It was when I wasn't doing YouTube then. I think it was when I first started. I was doing the blog. It was when I first started like collaborating, getting sponsored by Pradeep. That's when I genuinely grew like as a whole human. So I don't think I'll ever consider closing down my bakery as a failure. And I would never even, if I hear anyone close down their business, I don't think I'd ever consider it as a failure. It was like you learn so many lessons before you end up like deciding, nah, this is not for me, or it's time to let this go. I think it's a good lesson by the time, and that's the thing, by the time someone gets to the point where they openly and clearly state they don't want to put any more eggs in that particular basket, they have tried and they've realized, yeah, this is not going to work no matter how much I try. For some, it's definitely a financial reason. Mine wasn't a financial reason. It would have ended up being a financial reason had I kept on trying and trying, because if we have to keep buying water, which was never in our budget because water was provided by the building, so if that had continued longer, your budget has already been like reduced because of one thing that is out of anyone's control. So yeah, mine was never a financial reason. It was just too many things happened that ended up being like, nah, it's better at home. So if I was to be asked, would I rather a physical bakery or home bakery? I guess if you have any questions that I may not have answered, or you realized I didn't speak about in any of these 3 videos, please do let me know, and I will either answer you in the comments, or if it's a long topic, I will answer in another video. So that's it, and thank you for watching. Bye.